All right, so we're gonna make some plates. So I've already wedged up some clay, but I'm gonna weigh it out just to see what I got. Okay. So this is the smaller ball. This is the one we'll throw first. And I think this is around 2.5 pounds. Oops. Oh, I got to turn this on first. So once again, this is a little digital scale I got at Harbor Freight. It says Centec on it, but I don't know, right? So these are great because since they're digital, they can weigh really fast and they can do grams or pounds or ounces. And I have it set on pounds because that's just what we use. So this is about a 2.5 pound ball. And so when I'm really serious about what I'm making, I always weigh out my clay because this will help give me feedback, right? Because the wedging, I wedge it all up in one big ball. And then what I do is I cut it up into the sizes that I think I need. This is my first decision, the big decision in the chain. Well, there's other decisions, right? Are you using an old bag of clay? Are you using a new bag of clay? Are you using reclaim? Is your clay slightly hard or soft, right? Those are important decisions too. How much did you wedge it? Right? All that can change how your clay reacts on the wheel and what you end up with, or if it cracks or if it warps, right? If you don't wedge it at all, you can run into problems. Reclaim may have a little hunks of junk in it or maybe hard parts, right? So all those are part of the decision chain that decides your thing. So what I'm doing by weighing, I'm taking kind of one unknown variable and making it known. So when I'm throwing, especially when I'm throwing new things, I'll have a little pad of paper here and write down what size ball of clay I started with because I can't remember. In 10 minutes, I can't remember if I started with 2 pounds of clay or 4 pounds of clay or whatever. So I write it down. And then once I start getting a shape that I like, ooh, that was the perfect size, or ooh, I wish I started with a little bit more, or ooh, I wish I had a little bit less. I will just, for my next ball of clay, I'll just add a little bit more clay. I'm pretty sure this 4.6 pounds will be good. So what I do for this, since I'm not weighing it right before, I don't want to get the scale out. Here, as I'm going to write down how much this was on here, 4.6. So that when we get it out again, I'll remember. And then this clay was 2.5. I think I can remember that. And I usually write it down on a piece of paper. And I keep that scale right nearby. All right, so the tar paper. So remember that I cut out some tar paper and I've been soaking it in the hot water for till now. So we'll see if we can make a small plate with this 2.5 ball of clay. So here I have this wet piece of tar paper. It's all warm and happy. I need to get some slip, some goopy slip, a little bit of goopy slip and a little bit of water. So if you haven't made any pots for the day, you need to maybe get some goopy slip from somewhere. And I'm kind of getting that slip all loosey-goosey. Now, I could throw this directly on the wheelhead, but these things don't stick as well onto the wheelhead. They stick a little bit better to these plastic bats. So I put a little bit on. You hardly need any of this stuff, right? You see how thin a coat that is? And then I stick this bad boy down. I just want to put it in the middle. Center it. Now, the reason why you can't really go smaller than this, or it's harder to go small, like if I tried to throw on a small disc, I'll run into trouble because there's just not enough surface area for it to stay stuck down, I've found. Okay, so that's looking good. I'm going to push a little bit more into the middle. There, so then I just want to push it down and stick it down. Now, this part is kind of important. Get it stuck down really good because if you just leave it right now, if I put this, it's just going to slide around. So what I'll do is I'll just rib it down for a second. Now help force out all the air. I can even do this, start in the middle and work my way out, help force out. That should be stuck down pretty good. I'm doing one more time. There we go. So it's centered. It's looking good. Hopefully that does okay. All right, so then I just stick this guy down now. And so I'm throwing on this. So just right now, when I'm just looking at this now, right, you see actually how this piece of clay is probably going to end up, now that I'm just assessing this plate. So this plate's not going to be huge, okay? It's not going to be as big as the ones we looked at earlier. Right, so just me squishing this down and making this go out, I see that I'm already going to get close to this edge already. So maybe I'm going to subtract a little bit of this clay out. I can just tell. Just because, how do I actually know that? If I take this ball of clay, how do I know if I have enough? And I took this and I just smashed it straight down. Would it fill this thing up? And I think it would, right? If I smash it down and left it like that thick, would it smash down and be about that wide? Yeah, but I don't want to come too close to the edge of this because when I pull out the rim, I won't be able to get back under this and get it off of here. So I think I'm going to subtract a little bit of clay off of here. And just for giggles, let's weigh it. Let's reweigh it again since my scale is right here. Let's just quickly reweigh this again. So I bet you this is around, let me re-tear it and then just reweigh it again. Maybe 2 pounds. So this is 1.9, 1.9. So I think 1.9 will be good. Okay. So let's slap this guy down. I'm a little bit nervous because how easily that picked up. Let me see if I can get this stuck down again. Make sure it stays stuck. There we go. Then let's clean this off a little bit. There we go. All right, so let's throw a plate. So plate, softer clay is good. Hard clay is bad. So if your clay is slightly hard, just get another bag of clay. You want soft clay for this. You don't want to use a old clay that's gotten a little bit stiff because it's really hard because I have to take this clay and smash it out, make it wide. So I want to use this. So now to me, just visually, that makes sense because when I smash this down, it's probably going to come out, I don't know, hopefully around there wide. And then I'll still have room to throw it up and I'll still have a little bit of room to get my hands underneath this. All right. Oh, it slid around already. It felt loose to me. All right, so let's pull this off. Let's do it one more time. Wow, it's not sticking at all today. What's going on? Let's try it one more time. All right, let's see if that works. Feels better. All right, so that's the tricky part, right? Is getting it stuck down. It can be a little bit tricky. So here we go. We're throwing. It shifted just a little bit. So the bigger pieces definitely stick better. Like this is a little bit small to try to get it to stick down. All right, so I'm trying to be gentle, but we're just trying to make sure it's centered. Right, it feels okay. So I'm not really cranking on it. Like I can sometimes I would just try to muscle this into the middle. Not today. I'm trying to take it easy so I don't, because I could just by muscling this around, I could just tear this tar paper off because it's not super stuck down. Not like a bat pin. So the reason why I'm throwing on the plastic bat is that this tar paper tends to stick a little bit better on the plastic bats. There we go. So it's centered enough. I'm going down. Right. So the centering part is when it would come off because you're exerting the most amount of force then. So now I'm pushing it down. But if you look close, this happens a lot. Right here, you'll see that the clay is what I call mushrooming a little bit. What does that mean? Where since I'm pushing it down, that this part of the clay is wider than this part. What I don't want to have happen is for this part of the clay to fold over and trap an air pocket or a wet piece of clay right here. So what do I do to prevent that from happening? Because you already see that it's mushrooming over. And if I just keep pushing down from the top, that will mushroom over and then it'll collapse and the outside of this will hit before this part does. So I don't want to trap any air or water, because then what it does is it traps a semicircle of air or water, and then you'll get these semicircular cracks, right, that go just like a quarter way around your pot or something. That happens because of right here. So what I need to do is with my offhand, I'll push in like that, and I exert some pressure in to keep this part from folding over, this outside part. Okay, so I do that, and then what I'll do is then I just keep pushing down here, right here. So I'll keep pushing down here, and I'm pushing in with here. There. Pushing in and down. There. So you see how it's getting close? See how it's getting close? You see how that's even becoming sharper? There, it's getting close. So what I'll do is I'll keep doing the in and down. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to have to push harder here, right, to keep that from happening. So I'm actually just going to push there for a second. Push here for a second. There. So that's feeling okay. So how thick do I want it? Well, for this bowl, we're going to do one that's flat, 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 and then it starts doing a gradual turn, right? So this way, so this is the outside of my bat right there. Really, I probably need to stop somewhere about right here so that I have enough room to get the bat off and stuff. I don't want to go all the way out to the edge. So if you look here, I know it's hard for you guys to see the edge of the bat. There we go. Now you can see it. So here's the edge. Here, I need to stop at least there. I do not want to go any wider than that. So I can go out down a little bit more, but it's already about the thickness that I want. So this is going to be a small plate, right? Just based upon how much clay I start with. I'm not going to make a giant plate out of it. So how thick is that? And this thickness will give me enough room to make my, so it is that thick, but let's measure so that you guys can see it. So let's measure. So that right there is about 1 inch thick. It's a little bit actually over 1 inch. It's like 1.25 inches. Oh, it's almost 1.5 inches. No, it's 1.25 inches. I don't know if you guys can see it there. It's 1.25 inches thick. That's okay. If you want to go a little thicker, or I mean a little thinner, you can do that. It all depends, right, on the type of plate that you want. So when you make your plate, just think about how much clay you have. Did you have enough clay? Did you have enough clay at the bottom to do what you wanted? And then did you have enough for the wall? So I'm not going to leave it that thick. I'm going to go down like I normally do, right, down to a much thinner thickness here. And so let's measure again how thick we are. So now I'm about that thick. So that's good. And I want to leave a little bit of extra thickness on these plates because plates generally don't, in my opinion, don't get moved around like a cup. I'm always picking up a cup, walking around with it, handling it, right? So the weight of the cup with the liquid matters, I think, more than a plate. Like a light cup can be a thing of beauty, right? Because it's so beautiful and light. You can make them even translucent. But a plate kind of just sits there on the table. Like maybe you put food on it and carry it back to the table, but it isn't something you're always handling and dealing with and lifting up and putting it. So it's okay to have a little bit of weight there to it. I like a little bit of weight. So here, it's okay for leave it that thick. Plus, I need to trim more off. I'll trim some off the bottom. Plus, a lot of times if you're wiring it off, you lose extra weight there because the wire has a tendency to bow upward in the middle and you lose that, some thickness there. So now what I'm gonna do is start pulling straight back. And what I wanna do here is, I just want for this one, I want it flat, 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 maybe about to here somewhere. And then I'm gonna start going up to start creating the curve. So, so just the way I pulled back, I added a little bit of thickness. So I'm gonna go back down here in the middle and push that down just a little bit more and then start going back. There we go. There, now I'm gonna just start going straight back. So you see, the way I throw, I start getting this wave of clay. See how this clay here is starting to fold over on the outside? If I let that continue to happen, that plate is trapping water and air between this layer of clay and that layer of clay. As I pull back, I want to keep this clay. If I let that keep happening, this piece of clay will just tear off later when I'm raising. So what I want to do now is push that piece of clay back down or marry it back down into this clay right here. So you see that how I'm pushing it back down just so it bonds back down really good. So now what I'm going to do for the rest of the time I'm pulling, I'm going to push down here. So the way I could do this is pull back a little bit. And you see how it's starting to come back again. And then I can push down here. So what I do though, just to speed up that process where I'll do one or the other, I will pull back and I'll pull back lefty and pull straight back. And then what I'll do is I will put this sponge on top at the same time. So here we go. There we go. And so all the time I want to make sure that this is staying flat. Okay, so that this part in here is flat. There, so I'm going to add more water. It's okay to add tons of water in here. I'm opening flat, 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 flat. So right about here, even though I got tons of thickness, I'm going to start coming upward and leaving more clay behind so I could start my side edge. So I'm starting to come up a little bit and leaving more clay behind. So I'm leaving more thickness across the bottom. So flat, 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 and more thickness, more thickness, more thickness. So before I start raising this, you see how it kind of shot up in the air a little bit? It got a little bit taller already. Actually, that's a very kind of cool bubbly form. That would make a nice little bowl. I'm going to come back and smooth this surface out right now. Before I get too excited about what's going on the outside, I'm going to come back and smooth this out. Just because it's my finger marks on the inside. So I just want to come back with my sponge like this and just push it down. There we go. Down, 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 down. There. So you can see here, I don't know if you can see it, but that curve starts right there. It's starting to get thicker right here. So flat from here to here, start curving up. Now that curve up is too much, but we'll fix that here in a minute. So before, I want to compress this bottom just a little bit to keep it from cracking. Bottom compression here with this. There. Put that slip in there. So I just do it a few times. Don't push too hard. When I was younger, I used to really push down here. You don't have to. You just take some time, a little bit of pressure just to smooth everything out. Compression, compression, compression. If you really push hard, you're going to screw up your bottom. You get like really hard spots and soft spots, and you'll crack your pot. So don't push too hard. Just it's better to do fairly light pressure and takes your time doing it rather than push hard and do it very quickly. All right, so now I'll start making the walls. So this is just like throwing a regular bowl or something, except that since it's wider than most bowls that we've made before, we need to go slightly slower wheel speed. And eventually, right, it's going to be laid down quite a bit. Like this is going to be really open. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to really wet down the surface and really throw this going out wide. And I'm going to dig down from underneath here and try to lift some of this clay up because it's actually thickest here and then thinnest here. So when I do my first raising passes, I'm going to do it focusing on this part here and not thinning out that much because this part right here is going to actually end up pretty wide. I actually don't have to thin the rim out at all. I'm just going to lay it down basically, and that will thin out this area. The part I really need to thicken or thin out is down here because that is just changing direction. It isn't expanding out wide. So here we go. Push, push, push. So I'm really trying to get some clay. So I'm more pushing from the outside and the inside is more resisting. So you see how I'm really opening it up. So it's still bowl-ish, right? But I've definitely gotten it closer to what I want. And then what I've done is I've really focused on getting it even. So if you look here, I want even walls from thickness-wise. So that's really what I want, even walls. So we'll wet it down again. And I'll push in from down here. I'm not pushing out from the inside. I'm pushing in from the outside mainly. And then the inside hand is just resisting that push. There we go. So I still got a ways to lay it down. But as far as laying it down, I'm not really trying to do that yet. But you have to be careful because as you lay this down, really the ultimate position this wants to be in, if you push it down too far, is it wants to collapse. Right? So you need strength down in here. You can't just throw this super thin. Like if you're throwing a cup or something that's going to be a straight cylinder, you can make this pretty thin. This part may need to be thicker here. There we go. Going again. There we go. That was a good one. So I'm pushing out a little bit more from the inside to get the form to lay down, right? So wasn't as much focusing on thinning it as I was pushing out from the inside to get this form to lay down so that I could push this part down more. So I think it's still in the realm of, it's getting more into plate-ish, but it's still bowl-ish. It's still just kind of, in my opinion, just a wide-ish bowl. So I think I still want to try to lay it down even more. You notice my bat is now underneath the rim, like it's narrower than, that's fine. We can deal with that. But the base, right, is here. You can't really see it, but the base is there. And then I still have that extra. I just need that extra little bit of bat so I can get underneath here later. And this is going to be turning out to be a nice size little plate bowl thing. So I'm going to push down. So what I'm doing here is I'm pushing down here to change the curve down here. So then I could lay this whole rest of this curve down. So I'm changing the curve by starting here and then pushing this curve down to match. I'm going slow, go slow, go slow, go slow. And you know your plate is getting weak when it starts to do that wobbly thing, right? But you see how this one's still rock steady. I still have strength here. This takes practice, right? To have this much overhang, that takes practice. There are some people out there that have a massive overhang when they throw. Those people are just really good at this, right? And they practiced a lot. So you see how it started to get more plate-like. So if I look at this curve, it starts a gentle curve, has the curve I want, but overall, it's just still too high. So I just want to push this down even more for what I want, right? You may be perfectly happy right now. So in general, so should I stop? Should I go? I mean, that's always a big question among throwers, right? Is that good enough? Is that good enough? I say keep trying to get exactly what you want until the clay is telling you that you can't go any further, right? So if this is what you want, if this is what I want, I would stop here, right? But that's not what I want. I wanted this. My original vision was for something more laid down, right? The form looks okay right now. I'm okay with this. It looks okay. I'd be okay with this, but this is not what I wanted, right? Based upon what my idea was earlier. So I'm just going to keep going. So I'm going to keep making this. And the clay still has strength. You see, it has a little bit of a wobble, but I still can do this. So what's giving this strength right now is there's still a little bit of a curve. So I just don't push it flat, right? It's not a start curve and then go flat. That flatness, if you make something flat, it will be very weak. If you make something with just a little bit of curve to it, it has strength. So there's just a little bit of curve here coming up, right? It starts flat, 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 and then slowly starts swooping up. So it's like this arch. The arch allows me to keep laying it flat, to lay it flat, because the arch has a lot of strength and distributes out the stress of it wanting to collapse evenly all along the arch. So it allows it to have more strength and it doesn't want to collapse. If I tried to lay this and make it straight from here down, it's less stable. So what I'm doing is as I'm opening it, I'm just slowly taking that arch and flattening it out and pushing that arch downward. But it'll still have a slight curve to it till the very end. So because I push this part down, this part seems about right down there. I'm going to push it down just a little bit more. And then here, I'm going to push down this part too. So I'm being very careful now with my fingers. And I'm going to lay this part down here. Ooh, so you see how I just took that? Ooh, so it's getting platey. Now it's getting to the point where I'm going to have to start using my rib. So because this curve is so flat, huge, I'm going to use this part of this rib, which is huge and flat as well. So here we go. And then here I'll lay this part down. So I'm doing the same thing that I would with my finger, except my finger only has that much of a curve. And then this has a huge curve. So I think of these as like giant fingers when I throw. And these tools, right, because of the rubber, they don't have that much friction. So it allows you to have some push, but it doesn't grab the clay. These are beautiful tools. So It's getting close. It's in the neighborhood of what I want. So now this is definitely platum, I think, right? I wouldn't necessarily call this a bowl. So let's get a really good side shot of it. Oop, I wouldn't necessarily call this a bowl anymore. Now, plates, when they dry, have a tendency to pop up. What does that mean, popping up? They have a tendency where when they dry, that the rims dry first and they shrink and they pop upwards. So what you want ideally is actually to push this rim. For me, I want to push my rim flatter than what I think I need, and just count on it, the rim coming upward as it dries. So I'm gonna actually make this plate flatter than what I think it's gonna be, or what I wanted it to be. So that gets really hard because now I can feel it. It is weak now. And I can't do any more with this from now on. So luckily I got what I wanted, right, out of this, and it looks pretty good. It's pretty flat. And what I'm thinking about is what I'm going to do for the decoration inside. So if you look at this, right, the way how I would break this curve down of this plate is flat, 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 flat. And then if you look here, it starts to curve up and then starts to curve up like there. So maybe I need to push this part down more. I'm going to push this outside part down more because it does have a it does start curving up quicker here. So I'm going to push this part down more just to make it flatter. So I'm risking a little bit because the plate is getting really weak. There's not much fight left in this clay. All right, so good. So now I'm going to, the inside is done. The rim now is what we're going to deal with. The backside, you don't really worry about the backside of the plate. I'm going to trim that and do all that when the time is right. All right, so if your rim is really mangled up, this rim is actually looking okay. So let's just do one, let's just see how the rim looks if I just do it. Okay, so this rim is good enough that I would have been happy with that. I would just do that. So if you look at it spinning around, that rim looks pretty good. Let's put something in there to help it focus on the rim. So if you look at that rim looks pretty good, pretty steady. It's not blobby, but let's cut off the rim just to show you how we would do that on a plate. Right, so the rim we would cut off by doing this. So here, I'm just going to take my needle tool here and I cut basically straight down into the rim. And I support it on the outs underneath with my finger. And this isn't really supporting it. What it is I like to think of my hand down here as like another set of eyes, right? So if the plate starts doing something strange, starts wobbling, starts collapsing, I'll feel it first with my hands, right? So it's not really pushing up too much. It's more about feeling it. I call it like seeing it with my fingers, right? I'm seeing or understanding what's happening with my fingers rather than my eyes. There we go. Cut it off, right? So this rim didn't need to be cut off, but I cut it off just to show you. And then these little crumbs here get a little bit out of control here. So sometimes I gotta pull off these little crumbs of clay. Hey. Oh, there's a lot here. And that's just because the clay is really goopy out here, and this goopiness just doesn't want to come off with the rest of the clay. There we go. All right, so now let's round this off. Got to re-wet the outside with my sponge and round this baby off. There we go. And then take my chamois, which I lost. I think I was using it for hand building. So I just take my little piece of plastic and I make it into a U shape. And I want to go slow when I do this. Slow, slow, slow. There we go. I want to clean up my rim. Man, that is an odd view for you guys. Like Batman when they go to the Joker's place. You know, like whenever Joker, the old Batman, everything was crooked. So I'm trying to straighten this out. So I'm just going to make this the U shape here. All right, so there, we're almost done. Right, make that rim look beautiful. And then I'll come back and usually there's a slight disruption here when I do that, where it alters the shape of that, how this comes up just by doing that plastic thing. So I'll push that back down just a little bit with my rib, clean up that transition between the edge of the plate, the rim of the plate, and the edge of the plate here. All right, so now I have this beautiful surface. So what do I do to get this off, right? I can undercut it a little bit but if we look down there, there is no, look how deep that is. Woo! That is really down in there. I could try to undercut it, and that's really far away. But if you feel compelled to undercut it, I get it, right? Because you undercut everything. So for this undercut, I do not get to just take clay away, right? Like I normally would. I'm just going to try to sneak my tool in as flat as possible. So, you know, this is the way we would normally use this tool a lot. I'm going to lay it flat like that. But I just want to lay it flat. Normally, I probably wouldn't do this. I'm just going to go in there and just cut a little groove in the bottom. There we go. That's all I need to do. I felt it, couldn't see it. Right, so now remember that this is on a piece of tar paper, right? And we could see it, right? Let's lift up the edge of that tar paper just so you guys can see it. Hope you guys can see it. It's down. All right, so there, you can see me lifting up the edge, right? I do not need to wire this off the tar paper, but I do probably need to wire the tar paper off the bat because it might be stuck down there really good. Oh, let's clean up the outside of this first, this area. Be super careful because you may disrupt your rim of your guy. All right, so here what I want to do is lift the edge of this tar paper up because I can't really grab it, right? It's too tight in there. So ideally, probably I should have used a bigger tar paper bat for this, right? So you see it now, now I got my finger on, but I can't really grab it, right, to get it off. So what we're going to do here is, so you still need a board, right? So I have my board. I still have you still need a bat for this, right? Or some board, but you don't need a bat that has pinholes. You don't need you could just be any wooden board or something, right? So what I'm going to do here is just get back down here is I'm going to wire this bat off, my tar paper bat. I'm going to wire it off. So I'm lifting up the edge and I need to make sure the wire gets underneath there, right? So I'm just eyeballing it, see how the wire, oh, and this is a fishing line wire. I think the fishing line wire would be best for this. So you see how the wire went under? I don't know if you guys could see it. The wire went under. It's going under the bat, right? And so what that does is just release that tension, that stickiness. See how it's already starting to slide? So that's my second cut, right? That bat is ready to go. I could even add some water down there. Let's cut some extra water down there. There, you see how the bat is ready to go. All right, so then I just want to slide it onto my board. Right down here. So you see, this is my board. I want to make sure that the second board is a little bit lower than this, what my wheel head or the bat. So I'm just going to use my leg here to hold up the edge of this board here. And I'm just going to slide this bat onto this bat here. If I can. So this is actually a little bit too wide for this. Like I wasn't anticipating making one this big. I should have used a slightly bigger bat. That would have made it a lot easier. So this board here is lower than the top edge of that. So when it slides much easier. And then I'm just pushing on the edge of the bat down here, getting my fingers underneath. There we go. Slide, 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 pull, pull, pull. There we go. It's on there, right? And so this could be any wooden board, right? Or a hard whatever, right? And so now it's going to live on here. I did not wire it off that thing. All right, so that one's ready. Let's do another one. All right, so there's my plastic. Okay. So you always got to keep track of this little piece of plastic because this little piece of plastic can end up in your reclaim super easy. All right, so let's go with a bigger bat. So this is one. These are bats that I cut out that fit the same size as this plastic wheel head. I also have bats that are the same size as this metal wheel head. And I have one plastic bat that's the same size as this wheel head. So like I said, these bats stick better to the plasticky ones. So I usually use a plasticky one first. These bigger bats stick better than the smaller bats. I don't think it really matters which side you put down first. Oh, this is not the right one. This is my dry one, right? I just grabbed the dry one by mistake. Needs to be a wet one. So that's why this one wasn't sticking. So I have a wet one here that's been soaking in the warm water. I was like, what's going on? So here, this is my wet one that's been soaking in the warm water, right? So it's happy and warm. Oh, it's much better already. So I'm centering it up-ish on the edge of this. And then I'm going to make, oh, I'm going to stick it down. Ooh, this one I cut funny. Look at, oh, that's because there's two of them. That was goofy. There we go. Push this down for a little bit. Make sure, what I'm doing really is forcing out all the air, because the air will be bad there. And then I'm going to force it, really stick it down. Let's go with this one. So these bats stick better than the little ones. Like I'm not too worried about this one coming off, even though they do come off every once in a while. The littler ones come off all the time. These I haven't had any trouble with these big guys. And it's stuck down. Usually if there's a problem, I would see it right now with it trying to curl up. There we go. So it seems to be stuck down really good. I need to get my bigger ball of clay. So this is my 6 pounds of clay, I think. So this piece of clay, this is just the number I think I need, right? So in my notes right now, I would write for that size piece of plate, for that plate, that I would only need to start with a 2-pound ball of clay. So this is only a 2-pound plate. Let's actually look at one more thing I forgot to do, is when we look at this plate, remember clay shrinkage, this clay is going to shrink about 11%. That's 11% from now, right? When it comes off the wheel, or maybe 11% from when it comes out of the bag. The wheel may shrink even more because it's wetter, right? So let's measure that and just try to do a quick calculation of that. So that's 8.5, and then minus 11% of 8.5. That's how much smaller that's going to be. So let's talk about how much that is. What is 11%? Well, let's just do a quick calculation. Let's just say 11% is about the same as 10%, right? This is going to shrink 0.8 inches between now and when it comes out of the kiln. A lot of that shrinkage happens between now and when it gets loaded into the bisque, right? So, and then there's some more shrinkage at cone 10 at cone 6. Right, so if I'm going to measure this, right, so 0.8 inches smaller, it's going to be like down to there somewhere, right? So this plate is from there to there. It's going to be that much shorter. That is a lot of distance, right? So as you're making, the shrinkage affects plates, seems to, like, from our perspective, right, that is a noticeable difference, right? That is huge. And it's just that plates are bigger in one dimension than like a cup. Like we rarely see an 8-inch cup that people would just use. We see like a 4-inch cup, but a 4-inch cup, as far as just the actual distance, measurable distance of the shrinks, would be half the distance, so it's less noticeable, right? So for every 5 inches, for example, it's going to shrink half an inch. That's just a good rule of thumb. So if you want a 10-inch plate in the end, right, you need to make an 11-inch plate when you start, at least. So you're always thinking, right, just like I was saying before, think about the final product as you're making your clay, as you're even wedging your clay. So let's do this one. I'll do this one a little bit faster with less explanation. So right in the middle. So softer clay once again. That bag had some goobers in it. So these bigger bats tend to stick pretty good. So I'm not so worried about this bigger one sticking. Yeah. But once again, I'm not going to crank it like crazy because I'm worried. These do sometimes still do it. But I could just, like, I'm not powering this into the middle like I normally would, because it still can come off. But if you don't have bats, right, those bats cost, I don't know how much they cost. $15 a piece, these plastic ones, maybe 20 bucks a piece, right? That's expensive. So if you buy 5 of them, you've blown $100, right, with shipping. That's a lot of money, right? And this tar paper is basically free, and all you need is one bat. Just put it on, and you're good to go. And then, like I said, come to the studio. When you come do your pickup and drop off, come to the studio, and then we'll give you some tar paper, and then you just cut up your own based upon the size that you think you need, right? So once again, this tar paper probably wouldn't work so much for cups, but it will work great for plates or flatter, wider bowls. Now, it doesn't mean that you couldn't throw a cup on a big piece of tar paper like that, like this, but it just, I don't know, that's just not efficient. All right, here we go. So centered. Right now I'm going to go down and wide. Once again, I'm using soft clay, so I'm just going to push this down like that. And so this plate's going to be much wider. So it's going to be a flat bottom plate, right? And then I'll have a rim that comes up. And the rim will actually change directions more abruptly. So now I'm getting close to the mushrooming thing, so I'm going to push more from the outside and make sure it doesn't mushroom over. Here we go. So I'm just pushing down, down, down. Make sure that you're not pushing down too hard against the wheel head with your hand, right? Because you could really abrade away the skin here. Take it easy. Go. Oh, there we go. So I'm pushing down pretty fast. Take your time. A lot of junk comes off when you make plates. A lot of slip and clay. Just recycle all that, right? Don't worry that so much stuff is coming off. There we go. All right, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. That distance there is good. I'm back from the edge, right? Enough. I'm good. I'm good to go. So then I'm going to open. Now, plates I measure a lot because if you're off by a little bit, you end up messing. Ooh, so I'm a little bit too thin there. So what do you do actually when you go down too thin? What I do is instead of going down at that level, right, I will open up a little bit higher than that now from now on. So instead of all the way down there, I'm going to raise up. So that's the bottom of the hole. I'm going to raise up a little. And so for the rest of this time, I'm going to raise and go up a little bit wider, taller than that. So I'm going to leave a little bit of extra clay behind just outside of this hole that's too low. And that should give me enough clay. Then I'll come back in here because I made that part too thin, right? I'm going to come back in here and push that back into the middle. Now, that could be okay. That thinness could be okay if I was thinking that I wasn't going to trim a foot on these, but I'm going to trim a foot on these like I usually do. So let me see if I fixed it. Much better, right? And this is going to be a flat plate. It's going to have a pretty shallow foot. I'm okay with that. And then I do the same thing that I did before where I'm opening and pushing down with this guy here. And there we go. Opening and pushing down, opening and pushing down. And then, so since I have to go out so far, I will stop here and try to fix any blemishes right now. So I'm just going to try to flatten this out and just make that pretty and flat before I continue. I don't rib it, but I'm just going back and forth with my fingers because when I open, sometimes I don't open this flat, right? It's not perfectly flat. It's like a hump somewhere. And I'll fix all that right now before I continue on. Because it's easy for me, if I have any excess clay, it's very easy for me to just push that into this wall right here. But if I go way open, it's really hard to move that excess clay to the outside. So I try to take care, I'd stop halfway, take care of it, and then I just keep going. Now I'll add more water because I don't want this to dry out. I do not stress in my teaching that how much water or not how much little water you should use. I think you should just use however much water you think you need. If you want to throw dry, if that's a priority, then do it. If you want to throw wet, go ahead. Whatever helps you get what you want in the end, right? So here there's a hump, right? But it's flat here. So now I just need to push this part down so it matches that. There, so I'm just pushing that. And so this clay has to go, this extra chunk of clay has to go somewhere. So I am pushing this extra chunk of clay out to the wall of the pot. So here, and if there's a low spot, I can kind of leave that clay behind in the low spot, which is kind of the case here. There's a low spot like right there. I can kind of let that hump kind of drop off there. So there's still a little bit of a hump here. So push that clay out one more time, out to the low spot. I'm kind of marrying that into the, oh, that did very good. So now before I throw this wall, I'm gonna make sure this looks, the whole bottom now looks really good. So I'm gonna come back and check the whole thing all the way across. I'm not really trying to move things around. I'm just trying to smooth it out now. Not trying to move any clay around. I'll come back now with this and do a very light pressure here, not aggressive, but I will take time, right? So all that extra clay, all the goop comes off. I'm compressing the surface. Compress, 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 compress the surface. So look how beautiful. I want that to look really nice and beautiful and finished, even though I may have to come back later and deal with it. Also, I think, this is just me thinking, that because I compressed that surface, I took off a lot of the wet clay. So this bottom is not going to get wet anymore. So less chance of S-cracking because the clay won't be as soft. Also, I don't think it absorbs water as fast. If you compress that surface, I don't think if I get water inside of here, which will happen when I'm throwing this outside, it doesn't absorb water as fast. So it doesn't, all this throwing water won't absorb into there, which helps, I think. All right, so let's do the walls. So here I'm gonna throw the walls just like I did before, but this is really wide right now, right? Let's just measure how wide it is now. This is 10 inches wide. So if I just stop here, right, and I say, hey, I'm done, I'd end up with about a little bit less. So it's about 10 3/4, but let's just say it was 10 hypothetically. I mean, it's just 9 3/4 I meant, and then, but let's just say 10. I'd end up with something that's less than 9 inches because it's going to shrink more than 10%. That's huge. While I'm doing this, let's talk about size of plates. Before we do that, let's talk about wheel speed. This is quite a bit farther out than our normal like bowl cup thing, whatever. So the general rule is you have to go slower on your wheel speed the wider you get, or the more clay you have to put down, right? So that this started off as a 4.5 pound ball of clay. I need to actually probably, my wheel speed needs to be slower than if I was throwing it when I'm centering, while I'm doing everything, opening, my overall speed needs to be slower than if I was throwing a small piece of clay. Also, the same thing, as the clay gets wider, I need to hold steady longer and have a slower wheel speed, right? If you go too fast, the pottery throws you rather than you throwing the pottery. So it is just a lot of mileage. So think about if you had small tires on your car versus big tires on your car, right? If you have big tires on your car, they go much farther for one rotation, right? If you have little car, right? I have a little Prius and they have little tires, right? My little tires don't go very far for one rotation, right? So this thing, right, is just like a big tire. It is a lot of mileage from one revolution. And so you have to hold steady for longer, and you have to have a slower wheel speed because there's just more dynamic force out here that wants to whip you around. So you have to stay steady. You have to have a slower wheel speed for this. We didn't talk about that with the other plate because the other plate, maybe bowls are that wide. You've made bowls like that before. But for this one, we're not, right? It's a lot bigger. It's been a long time. We don't see us making bowls this wide that often with a cylinder that's going to be this tall. So I'm cleaning up the outside edge, just making sure, and I pulled it out just a little bit more. And then, so flat bottom, flat bottom. So I need to think about, remember what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a flat bottom bowl that's going to turn up and then have a rim, right? So that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to start throwing. I'm pushing pressure. I'm going to do a slightly different technique where I throw through my sponge today. So I'm going to have, and this is a technique you see a lot of potters use here, and I'm just going to do it today. I'm just going to hold on to my sponge and I'm going to push through my sponge into the outside. There's no particular reason why I'm doing this here rather than on the other plate. I'm just wanting to show you that. And because I have my thumb in my hand. So really the first few things, I'm just trying to even out this thickness, and I'm also trying to lay this down, get it started to get on its journey to wide, right? I'm fixing that rim because the rim looked kind of goofy. So here, I'm going to push this in down here and start raising and try to go out wide here. There, going out wide. Go slow, slow, slow. Take it easy. So you can see now, definitely plate them, like because it's so wide and so flat, this automatically is already in the neighborhood of plate rather than bowl, which is great. But so I'm going to leave this thicker here because I want room to lay this down pretty flat and then it's going to come in, it's going to scoop up, and it's going to push back down. So I need extra strength here. For the other one, I just kept thinning it out and left it, and I tried to make it a little bit thinner, but I need to leave some strength because I know that what's going to happen in a few minutes is going to make the plate weaker for the form that I want. And I just know that because of practice, right? That laying this out and being really flat causes much more stress, and it wants to just collapse flat, right? It wants to collapse down to the wheelhead. So I need to have a little bit of strength here. Also, you notice that I'm not undercutting, pushing in as aggressively on the outside here. There's clay up to here, right here. And if we look on the inside here, where is that clay? Right here. So there is clay supporting this up to about there, right? So you see how this curve starts, and then there's extra support here. So that just lowers my risk factor because that means this part can't collapse right here because there's clay here on the outside. Let's just go down. I don't know if you could see both. So this wideness here is right here. That is good for if you're worried about rim collapse, right? It's not good if you want to be super efficient, but if you want to make a plate that isn't going to collapse on you while you're throwing, that's what you want. And then you could trim that off later. So let me try to make this a little bit wider. So, but there's a drawback. Because that extra clay is there, when I push this down, when I try to lay this out, I have to push extra hard here because that rim on this clay underneath is pushing back. So this stuff, super flexible, right? Because there's nothing underneath. This stuff right here, super supported. I have to actually push down pretty hard here to get that to become wider. So I actually have to physically change that shape by pushing it down. There. So you see how it's starting to get close to what I want. So I'm going to stop for a second and just clean up this part because I did some manipulation here, and I'm just going to come back in here and clean this up a little bit. So there's a lot of extra slip there. Don't worry if a lot of junk is coming off when you do these bigger guys. So I forgot to talk to you about this, but let's do a wideness check right now. So this ruler is 10 inches wide. I lost my other one. So let's think about this. A cabinet in here, at least in the United States, are all about 12-ish inches deep or 11 something inches deep. That is because the way the lumber comes to the cabinet maker, right? And everything's in feet. And so the cabinet's usually above your kitchen counters are about 11 inches deep or 10 something, 11 something inches deep. If you make your plates 12 inches wide when they're done, they won't be able to fit into those cabinets. You'd have to put them in a wider cabinet and someplace else. But I know that we have always kept our plates that we use all the time in the upper cabinets, and we just pull them out, right? So if you want a plate that you would want to just use all the time for dinner, right? Measure your cabinets, and most of your cabinets are going to be about 11 some inches deep. So if your plate is 11 or smaller, it will probably fit into your cabinets above. So let's do where's my other ruler? I think my other ruler went away. Oh, here it is. So let's just measure it really quickly just to see if we're in the right neighborhood. So right now it is 11 inches right now. So I can go another inch out and it'll shrink down to 11. I'll be good. So let's just see if that happens, right? So I'm going to start using my rib to push this out now. Laying it down. Ooh, look at that. Beautiful. There. So go slow. I'm going pretty fast for my plate. So you can see each step, each time I touch the clay should now, from now on, get closer and closer to being done. All right, so I could stop there, right? Because that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the way that's looking right now. If we look at it from the side, I'm pretty happy with that. The way it's looking right now. I'm pretty happy with that, but I wanted to put a rim on there where the rim would lay flat, right? So this part looks good, and I'm just gonna lay this chunk down here more flat. So how do I do that? Once I get this part all done, right up to there, I will just wanna push this part down flat right here. So let's do that here with my rib. So I'm just gonna get super close on this one. So here, what I'm going to do here is, oh, if I got a mangled up rim, I might want to fix that up right now or clean it up some. Because sometimes after I push it flat, I can't, it's hard for me to get back in here. Now, if your clay is super weak right now and already is starting to collapse, you can't do this next step, right? You need to still have some strength here. And you see that I basically finished off all of this other area. I basically finished this off, scraped off all the water, finished this off, scraped off all the water and all that. I want it to be the way I want, because when I push this edge down, it's going to become super duper weak. So I am going to give it a partial support right here, and I'm going to use this curved side of the rib and start laying it down a little bit. Start pushing, 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 laying that down, laying that down, laying that down. So you see how that edge now is starting to become lower and lower. Let's do it that way. You see that? So you see how this, there's a flat, 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 flat. There's ever so slight a curve, and then boom, it lays down flat. So the same rule happens here as happens in the other plates, that the edges dry first and they pop up. So if anything, I need to lay this down just a little bit lower, hopefully, than what I'm thinking I need. Right? So I'll just keep laying this down a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. There we go. There. So there, that's looking pretty good. So what is this? What did I just do? I created a flat section here, right? And the way I think about it is that I could do one decorative thing or have this plain or something. And then here, this is like a frame for the food or for the plate, right? And so design-wise, starting here, right where the flat part starts, or this rim starts, there's a line, a very subtle line, and I could do a different sort of decoration here, and I could do a different decoration here, or have a change of color. So I'm already thinking about how I'm going to use this change of curve in my design, right? So another thing you could do is you could actually delineate this change. So I probably wouldn't. So normally I would just stop here. But just for you guys, we're going to put another line right here, because there's flat, 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 flat. And then it starts to curve and starts doing the, it starts ever so slightly, starts to curve up, and then it goes flat. So it has a line here at where that, let's put a line in here too. So I could just take anything kind of squarish. So this is just a square stick. Right, and I could use one corner and draw a line right where I think it should be flat, right there. Then you're probably thinking, well, John, that doesn't look so good, or what are you doing? Well, and then, so there's a couple schools of thought about what I just did. I just created like a bump, right, in my design, right? So I'm just gonna leave that for now, and then when it's leather hard, I'll sponge that off a little bit. So the reason why people don't like that is, let's say you're eating and you're like, your fork is like dragging, scraping across the plate, and they'll hit that and have like a jarring thing, right? Stop for a second and then keep going, right? So what I'm going to do later, because right now that's really sharp and they're little burrs of clay, but when it's leather hard, I'll smooth it out a bunch, right? And then when I glaze it, I'll make sure that there's extra glaze fills that crack in, so it's really it'll get much more rounded off. So each step from now on in the trimming and all that, I'll sponge it around it, and then when I glaze it, I'll make sure glaze gets in there and fills it in, so it'll get more rounded off. But there'll be a thicker spot and there'll be a change there. Something different will happen. Also, when I do my design, then it really breaks this plate up into 3 parts now rather than 2, right? Because before it was just this flat part, and then here was the rim. Now I've created 3 zones for my composition. I have center, I have this little spot to do something, and then I have that spot out at the rim to do something. So that was a conscious choice, right? That changes my options, or what I can do or will do for next time. All right, and then the same process for getting this off, right? This one will be actually much easier to get off, because I could actually get underneath here now, right? I'll get my wire off, and I could just pull this out, right? By pulling the edge onto the board, right? Much easier. I don't have a board ready. Oh yeah, I do. Let's see if this will fit. Okay, good. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this bat, right? Let's measure this again, and I'll talk to you a little bit about why I cut this disc this size. So right now it is like, it was close to, let's clean this off. right? So right now it is close to 11 3/4 inches, right now. Let's go down really close. Right, so it is 11 3/4 inches. So when this dries, it's going to be under 11 inches. That is great because when it's fired, that means they'll still be able to fit into the cabinet, right? So that is really good, right? And that's why you make your bats this size, right? Because I can use this bat size as a judge. You see how close this edge of this bat, it almost lines up, right, with the edge of my plate, right? So if I don't make these plates bigger than this bat here, right? My disc, my I think it's probably 12-inch disc, right? Then when these shrink, they'll be the right size to fit in a cabinet, or at least the cabinets I have, right? So if you have consistency, the size you cut these, right, can be the judge that you want to make your thing that size, and that helps you. You've already done your measurement. So if I was going to, so this plate, the next plate I make, especially if I want it to kind of match, if I start with the same clay amount, right, and I push it out, and then I make the plate about this size again, because these two are exactly the same, then I should have a plate at least that matches ish, right, and that fits in my cupboards, right? If they get bigger, right, you can make bigger plates, but then they're a little bit of an issue. Where do you put them? Well, you have to put them in the really deep cupboards, right, and those deep cupboards are like 2 feet deep. All right, so let's just cut it off just to finish up the demo. Where's my wire tool? I have to get a new one. So here, I'll just wire it off. So I have to still wire it off from underneath, right, all the way around. Ooh, you guys are getting a weird view of this now. There we go. So I have to get this wire. Oh, this wire, let's see, it's long enough. So I just got to sneak this wire under here. Get it under. Then just cut it off. There we go. So that should release the pressure, right? The tension that's there. And then I should be able to get this board. So remember, I need this board to be lower than this bat, right? So I'll put it up against there. And this one, I could just grab the edge of this. There we go. Almost screwed up my rib and slide her off. There we go. So now it's on my board. So remember, I'm putting them on bats because I just bought many different kinds of bats over the years, but this could be any sort of board, right, that you have lying around. And there we go. Looking good. All right, so then next class, what we're going to do is trim these bad boys. We'll talk about bottoms and trimming next class. All right, any questions?